So in this section, we're going to start talking about naming conventions and lead on to packages and statics and so on. But we're going to start with naming conventions. And there's actually a good reason why you want to do this. And two of the biggest reasons for adopting these accepted conventions, which we're going to be going through in this video for naming your variables, methods, and objects in Java, is that it makes your code easier for others to read. Now, others here actually includes yourself when you come to look at your code weeks or perhaps months or maybe even years after you've originally written it. Because trust me when I say that you will forget why you've done something. So if you can make your life easier and the life of other programmers by following these accepted conventions, it's just going to make things a lot easier for all concerned. So let's start off talking about packages. So the things you actually get to name in Java are packages, classes, interfaces, methods, constants, variables, as well as type parameters. And pretty well all of those you've actually seen in the course so far. But let's actually start talking about packages first. And the format of the package is to always be in lowercase. Now the package name should be unique, and you need to use your internet domain name reversed as a prefix for the package name. And you've seen me using that in the course with com.timbachaka. And Oracle actually specify a convention for package names, and there's a link to that, quite a long URL, which you can actually find out more about that. But I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of what they are anyway on the next slide. Now, some of the invalid domain name components. Firstly, if your domain name has got a dash in it, which is fairly common for domain names, you need to change that when using a package to an underscore. Now, the domain name components starting with a number should instead start with an underscore. And also importantly, domain name components that are Java keywords should have that component starting with an underscore as well. So here's some examples of converting invalid domain name components to valid ones. In the first case, switch.supplier.com, if that was your package name, you should actually make that com.supplier._switch, because of course switch is a Java keyword. Second example, oneworld.com with the numeric 1, you should actually change that to com._oneworld. And the third one, experts-exchange.com, would be com.experts_exchange. And that's an example of some package names: java.lang, java.io, org.xml.sax.helpers, and com.timbachaka, which you've seen throughout this course, .autoboxing. Okay, let's move on to class names now. Now, class names should use camel case. The class names should also be nouns because they represent things. They should start with a capital letter, and each word in the name should also start with a capital. For example, linked list, as you can see there, with a capital for the word linked and a capital also for the word list. Now some example class names: ArrayList, linked list, string, top song, gearbox, and main, as you can see there. And again, we're capitalizing each word for the class name. Okay, interface names, very similar rules. Capitalized like class names with camel case. Consider what objects implementing the interface will become or what they will be able to do when you're actually coming up with a name. So examples for that would be list, comparable, serializable. Method names, let's talk about that now. Now, the method names should be mixed case. They're often verbs because they reflect the function performed or the result returned. Examples would be size, get name, or add player, as you can see on the screen there. Let's talk about constants. Now constants, so we haven't used those much in the course, but they're actually to define something which is actually a constant value. In other words, a value that's never going to change in your program. And you can see there's a couple of examples there of max_int, severity_error, and pi. And some of those are actually used within the Java framework itself. So constants should be all uppercase. You need to separate words with an underscore, as you can see below. And they should also be declared using the final keyword, which actually tells Java that you won't be changing the value. And you'll be learning more about what final and static and so forth is in this section of the course as well. Okay, variable names, also field names as well. And just to remind you, a variable name I'm using to really pretty well covers any variable that you're defining in your class, but also this applies to fields, which of course are basically variables assigned at the class level that we actually assign, using a scope and so forth at the top of the class. So in both cases, you should follow these rules, generally speaking. To be a mixed case, the actual name should be meaningful and indicative. Start with a lowercase letter, unlike classes which are our interfaces, which are uppercase. don't use underscores for variable names. And you can see some examples there. League, Sydney Swans. And in case you're playing along at home, Sydney Swans is actually incorrect because that's actually showing a capital S. So that should actually be a lowercase s for Sydney. But then after that, the second word is an uppercase. So again, just confirmation there that you start off in lowercase, but then the second and subsequent words, as you can see that in the case with box length down the end, should actually be in uppercase. So that's camel case essentially. Okay, moving on, type parameters. Type parameters generally are a single character and capital letters as well. And you saw that in the generic section of this course where we actually used type parameters and we used just a single letter. And there's a link there you can go to find out more about it for the guidelines given by Oracle, who of course who look after Java. And they've got quite extended information if you want to go in there and find out more about that. And just as an example of some type parameters, you saw this in the generic section. E as in element, which is used extensively by the Java Collections Framework actually, which you'll be seeing when we get to that. K for a key, N for a number, T for type, V for value, and SUV, etc., second, third, and fourth types. So that just gives you a bit of a standard way to actually come up with type parameters when you're needing to use those in your code. So that's actually it. I know it's a quick overview, but I just thought it was important to give you a bit of an overview of some of the standard naming conventions used by Oracle. And there were links in the slides, as I mentioned, where you can actually find out more about that. And it's just important to try, and again, as I mentioned at the start of this video, to follow these conventions because they can ultimately help you and other developers in the future who may have to look at your code at some point down the track when you've actually forgotten why or how you did a particular thing. But just by looking at these standard conventions and making sure your code implements them, you can save yourself a lot of time. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.